What's up, guys? My name is Foma, and I'll be teaching you how not to go broke while living with a chronic illness.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Don't Go Broke Trying. I am your host, Reni, and today we have a very special episode for you. But before I get into that, let me introduce myself. As I said, I am Reni. I am a finance content creator, and I make content about financial literacy, career development, and lifestyle. I have a YouTube channel. A lot of you have been listening to this podcast and don't know that I have a YouTube channel. So I do have a YouTube channel. The link is in the description box or the show notes below. And you can watch even the video version of every single podcast episode on my YouTube channel if you would like. It lets you see the guests, see our emotions. I think it's a bit better watching the video, but to each their own. So, today, as I said, we have a very special episode. And today we're going to be talking about managing and living with chronic illnesses and how that affects your finances. This is a topic that I have not explored on my YouTube channel, on my podcast, on my Instagram, anywhere really. So, I'm excited to speak to our guest today about how she lives with her chronic illness and how it impacts her finances. So, my guest for today is Foma. Hi, Foma. Thank you
Hi.
so much for coming on the podcast. I
Thank
really am
you.
grateful. And I actually tweeted like a few months ago. When was it? September?
Yeah, it wasn't
Yeah.
too long ago,
Yeah, it was
actually.
maybe in September. And I tweeted like, hey, I really want to do an episode on sickle cell and who can come and talk about it? And you were like, bet, I'm coming.
Absolutely, girl. I was like, must,
Yeah.
must.
Yeah. So I'm very grateful that you are here. So thank you so much. Do you want to introduce yourself maybe?
Yeah,
Just tell us a
sure,
little bit about
absolutely.
you.
All right, guys, as Rennie said, my name is Foma. And yeah, I was born with a chronic illness. I was born with sickle cell disease. And now I am the founder and CEO of a nonprofit organization called NotJustYou. And essentially, what NotJustYou is, it's a sickle cell support organization that's devoted to really supporting individuals and families affected by sickle cell disease, as well as really shedding like celebratory light on these individuals and like providing them a sense of hope because sickle cell disease is unfortunately really stigmatized within especially the ABC like Black, African, Caribbean communities.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's basically what I do. I've pretty much devoted my life to doing this.
Yes.
So yeah, that's a little
Yes.
bit about me.
And I love that you have devoted your life to doing this because it's a topic that we don't hear much about. Like, especially, I don't know, I am a carrier of the trait of sickle cell,
Yeah.
but I didn't even know until a few years ago. So I've been researching heavily over the past few years, but like I feel like most of my friends and family have no idea about sickle cell. Like we hear
Absolutely.
it, but
Yeah.
what does it actually mean? So I'm really
I
excited for you to tell
know.
us and maybe break it down in very simple and
I'm gonna
easy to
try my
understand
best.
terms. Perfect. So I start all my episodes with a Reni rated segment.
Oh
And
yes.
this is essentially where I ask you what product or service or song or literally anything that you're really liking right now. So do tell, what are you really liking right now?
Okay. Oh,
What
actually,
are
I have
FOMA's
this.
favorites?
Oh, that's good. That's good. Yeah. So I think right now I've really been liking. I don't know if anybody else watches House of the Dragon. Oh yeah, like the fact that it's done now. I just Rennie, please,
I'm
Rennie,
sorry.
please,
Everyone, I've
like
never watched Game of Thrones.
baby. No, honestly, like Game of Thrones was, mwah, and this
Yeah.
is even, mwah, like yeah, yeah. I
Really? What's
really
the difference? Is it just a
it's
sequel or
it's
prequel?
I believe it's actually before Game of
Okay.
Thrones, but then it came out like now, and
Hmm.
so it's like they've already gone through this season. This is the first season, and I can't believe I don't have anything to do on Sundays anymore.
I heard the next one comes out like 2024
Like,
or
what am I
something.
gonna
That's
do?
that's too long.
That is
Like
too
what
long,
kind
and I
of
just feel like it went by so quick. And yeah,
yeah.
so that's probably like what I've been like really loving right
Nice,
now. So
nice. Right
yeah.
now on Netflix, I'm watching. What am I watching right now? I'm watching Love Is Blind. Are you watching
Yeah.
it?
Okay. So I haven't started this season.
Oh,
I heard
okay. No spoilers
yeah. I
then.
heard it's pretty hot right
Oh
now.
God,
Yeah. I'm super
the men
excited.
are they're nuts. They say all the men in Lagos are mad. All the men on
Are
on Love Is
mad.
Blind are
Yeah.
very
I,
mad.
I seen the tweets and I was like, oh, let me just
Yeah.
keep scrolling. I'm gonna watch it probably within the next like 2 weeks.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
We should discuss after you
For
watch
real.
it. Okay, so now we are focusing on chronic illnesses for our episode today and how living with one can not only impact the quality of your life, but also the quality of your finances and your friends, I mean, your family's finances as well.
Absolutely.
So I hope this episode will be eye-opening for everyone who may be in this situation, but also not just for people who are in this situation, but for those of us who are not in this situation, we can maybe be more empathetic and understanding towards people who are in this situation. So could you tell us a little bit more about what sickle cell is? Like, what is sickle cell disease and how does it come about?
Absolutely. So, sickle cell disease is a group of hereditary blood disorders, and hereditary meaning, it's passed down from your family. And yeah, so it basically causes a mutation in the red blood cell protein called hemoglobin. And so this mutation causes our normally like round jelly donut shaped blood cells to now be crescent or sickled in nature.
Mhm.
And then you can imagine that doesn't really flow very smoothly through our circular veins and arteries. And so this disease often is like it's really characterized by the one of the symptoms being vaso-occlusive pain crises. So those are these like really, really, really horrible pain episodes.
Mhm.
And obviously you can imagine like the blood that runs through our veins really it makes everything work. So if there's one issue with the blood, you can imagine there are a whole other host of
Mhm.
side effects that happen. So that's kind of a little bit about the disease.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Thank you. I'm sure a lot of people had no idea what that was. So I'm glad that you explained it very
Yeah.
simply. But how does it come about? So you said it's hereditary. So I guess
Yeah.
if your parents have it, then you can
Ex-
get it.
exactly. So
Okay.
essentially, having like your parents would basically have the trait. So the traits are kind of the nomenclature is like if you have the trait, you would be AS, and then if you didn't have it at all, and you were kind of for this term normal, it would be AA, and then if you're like myself who has sickle cell disease, the full blown, then it's SS.
Okay.
And so there are other few like other types of sickle cell disease, which is why it's like a group of diseases.
Mhm.
But like just for simplicity, we'll go with those three. And so how someone gets sickle cell disease is if one parent or both parents have the trait, so SS and SS. And then if you remember from like elementary school, we did pundit squares.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so essentially, there's a 25% chance if both parents have the trait that the child will be born with sickle cell disease,
Mhm.
meaning their genotype is SS. And then there's a 50% chance that their child would just have trait like yourself.
Mhm.
So that would probably mean that both, actually, we'll come back to that. But, and then there is another 25% chance that your child would actually not have the trait or sickle cell disease at all, right?
Mhm.
And so the kind of what happens is a lot of people just don't know that they have the trait
Yeah.
and then they go and have a child, and some people get lucky and none of their kids actually have sickle cell,
Yeah.
or they only have kids with like trait, but then some unfortunately kind of like myself,
Yeah.
they end up like with sickle cell disease. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's kind of how it works.
Yeah. So I guess for me, I am AS,
Yeah.
which means that I don't have sickle cell. I don't have any of the symptoms of sickle cell or
No.
anything like that, but I could pass the trait down to my future children. Exactly.
Exactly.
And then they could have sickle cell if my partner was also AS. But we'll
Exactly.
get into that in detail, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
A lot of people aren't aware of this, as you said. Like people just get married without checking anything.
Willy-nilly.
Willy nilly, literally. But I in Nigeria, for example, it's very common to like ask on the first date, like,
Yes, I
what is
love
your
that for them. I
yeah.
really do.
So is it that it's not common in the Western world, or is it that it's more prevalent elsewhere? Like why don't we really know about it here?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So, essentially, sickle cell disease research has shown that it is most prevalent in the areas that were affected by the malaria endemic. So, that's like sub Saharan Africa, the Mediterranean, South Asia, um, where else? The Caribbean. So, yeah, those are the places that like were affected by malaria. And the mutation kind of came about from that, from my understanding and like the current research. And so it's actually extremely prevalent in the I think the three top countries is Nigeria, of course,
Mhm.
by a landslide,
Yeah.
unfortunately, and then India, and then Congo. So
Ah.
those are the places where it's like really packed, but obviously descendants of like all of sub-Saharan Africa, they're the ones that are often most affected by this disease, which is why it's also really common in African Americans and Caribbean. So because I feel like it mostly affects people who are Black, Caribbean, and African, I feel like that's why it's just not as common or paid attention. yeah,
Yeah.
paid attention to here.
Mm.
And we're not, I don't, we don't even have time to get into like the racial and the prejudice that comes with
Yeah.
like the prejudice issues that come with this disease, but like that's a real thing. And I feel like because it's predominantly Black people suffering from this illness and this condition is why it's kind of just like swept under the rug. So,
Yeah.
yeah, a little sad.
Yeah. I was about to say, like, I think the reason we don't hear about it in Western world is because the white people aren't really affected by
Yeah,
it.
we know.
So,
We already know what going.
yeah, we know exactly what going on. So let's get into now that you've given us a little bit of background about sickle cell, and hopefully everyone that was very helpful. And I'll leave some resources to your website in the show
Absolutely.
notes so that everyone can learn more. But let's get into your story. And so, where did you grow up, and what was your relationship like with money growing up, and how did having sickle cell impact your relationship with money growing
Yeah.
up?
So I was actually born in Toronto.
Mhm.
So yeah, I was born like not too far, GTA. And then I actually ended up moving to more west in Alberta. But essentially like growing up with money, like I think my parents did a really good job kind of like making me feel normal with
Mm,
sickle cell. And I'm really grateful to them because I feel like I really wouldn't be even have the confidence to do what I do now if it wasn't for the way that they treated me and how they treated like my disease, right? And so I feel like they never really made it seem like my sickle cell was a burden financially or anything. And even when I started doing a little bit of research, like, and just speaking to my mom about like coming on this podcast, so when she was telling me some stories, and I was like, dang, that's really crazy. I had
mm.
no idea. But I would say that one thing that I always knew is that I knew I needed money to take care of myself. And my mom being more of like the breadwinner and the one who kind of like, ran our house, like, um, I would say her lifestyle and like her job and the way she kind of like managed money is what really influenced and set the foundation for me. So like my mom is a nurse and yeah, I think her benefits or how that even works within like the healthcare field that really opened my eyes. But also my mom is like a work hard, play hard type of babe.
Okay.
So
Love it.
yeah, so
My
I
type
think
of babe.
yeah, for real. And I think that that is what really kind of like it let me know like okay, like my parents did a great job at um making sure that all our basic needs were met. Like I never had to worry about any of that stuff and I kind of started working from a young age. Like I think like maybe I was like 14 or 13 when I first started working.
Mhm.
And that was only because I just wanted money to buy things, like
Yeah.
buy fun things, go to the mall, buy food. Like it really wasn't like my parents took care of everything. Like my mom, like she like still pays my phone bill. Like yeah, it's
Oh,
actually really cute. It's like
mom, are you listening?
yeah, for real. And like, I mean, my mom is very like, you only splurge on the things that are necessary or that are going to like make you happy. Like,
Mhm.
my mom doesn't believe in paying outrageous amounts of money for like phone bills and like there are cheaper alternatives. And I think that's a big thing. There are cheaper alternatives, and like you'll always find a way if you really, really want to. So that's like kind of like when there's a will, there's a way. That is like kind of like my life motto for like everything. So I really see that in my finances. Like work hard, get your money, and take care of yourself. So
Nice.
yeah.
And what was your first memory of money, if you do remember it? Like
First memory of
maybe in
money?
relation to sickle cell. Like was it your parents paying for, or I guess they kind of shielded you from seeing it,
Yeah,
right?
like I feel like they shielded me from seeing. You know what? If honestly, I my first real like I just knew that oh like my mom's coverage will take care of
Okay. That's
my
and
yeah.
that's I feel I want to preface that we are in Canada, so we're
Yes.
speaking from a Canadian lens. I
Yeah.
will try to get someone on who has sickle cell in Nigeria, so I'm sure
Absolutely.
it'll be very different. But yeah, coverage, for example, is a
Yeah.
great benefit that we have here in Canada,
Yeah,
right?
I think maybe a little later I can kind of get into like what that looks like in various parts of Canada. I
Mm.
think that's quite fundamental to the story. But my first real memories was just kind of like, especially when I moved to Alberta, I was like 10 or like almost 10, and I just knew like immediately like my mom's coverage took care of majority of like my medical expenses. Like here in Canada, we only really pay for medication, like hospital treatments are covered. And so yeah, like I just knew that like I need a good job, and till this day it's I need a good job with benefits.
Mm.
Yeah, so I think
Oh, wow.
that's yeah.
That's even something that we don't, a lot of people who do not have chronic illnesses don't even think of, right?
Exactly.
Because for me, I could quit my job. I literally have no health coverage right now, except for OHIP, which is obviously the universal coverage that we
Right,
have.
right.
But like, if I need to buy drugs, it's coming out of my pocket. And if I had a chronic illness, I don't even know if I would be able to quit my job. So that's something I didn't even
Yeah.
like think of.
Yeah, for real. Like it
Hmm.
actually shocks me the fact that like people
People.
just go to like the dentist
Yeah.
and you just pay for it raw. Like
Yeah.
like
That's me right
yeah,
now.
like
The raw dog in life, right?
like yeah, like that a lot of things and I all like even just reflecting on like money and stuff like you don't realize like how some things are so like second nature to me that I it shocks me when people like think differently like
Yeah.
so yeah that's probably one
Yeah.
of those things.
Hopefully we'll uncover some more things that people can think of.
Absolutely.
So as you've gotten older, how has your relationship with money changed? Like I guess now you're probably responsible for your
For
healthcare
the most
more.
part, yeah.
Yeah. So and if you don't mind, how old are you? If you don't mind
Oh
sharing.
yeah, so I just turned 24 like in the summertime, so
Okay,
yeah,
perfect.
young
So
and
yeah, you're
fresh.
like an adult, an
Yeah.
adult now.
Yeah. So I would say that um I okay, so when I was growing up, I was not taught financial literacy
Mm,
by any means.
mm.
And so I think just living with a chronic illness, like having sickle cell disease, like you have a lot of time when you're sick to reflect on how you're going to get out of the situation, how you're going to make your life better. And I feel like growing up in like kind of like trauma and like turmoil cuz like sickle cell is a lot. I think it pushes you to like mature quite quickly and so I knew that I needed to figure out this money thing. Like, no one told me that. Like, my parents were shocked when I was like, "Yeah, I have this type of account. I invest." Like, I was the one who was telling them, "Oh yeah, like I'm investing in stocks.
Yeah.
I want to invest in stocks," and they're looking at me like, who told you that?
Yeah.
And how did you learn that on TikTok?" Like,
Yeah.
that's the type of things that they'll be telling me,
Mhm.
you know. So I would say that growing like as I aged, I was really intentional about trying to be more financially literate, which is actually kind of how I came across your content. Yeah, for real. Like during the pandemic, it was like I was like I have all this time. Like let's figure some things out, which is crazy to think because like that was like 3 years ago
I
now. Like I'm
know.
like
That's
no,
crazy,
my
right?
youth.
Right?
Yeah. So yeah, and but I will say like you know be financially literate, save, invest, do all of that stuff. But one thing that I learned from young and I keep learning more and more every single day is like my mom would always say health is wealth. And like
Mm, for real.
honestly, like if you're not healthy, you can't enjoy all of your money. Like, oh, good job. Like you have all this money in stocks, you have a house. Like, who's gonna live in a house when you're living in a hospital?
Yeah.
And so with that, I also like I enjoy myself. Like I really
We
like,
see that. We
yeah,
see that.
I'm
Follow her on Instagram,
for
guys.
real, soft life babe. Yeah, like I really enjoy myself because I know that at like there are so many times where like I was planning to do this, I was planning to do that, and then bam, I'd wind up in the hospital.
Mm.
Like real life, like that would happen. There were times like, man, I could get to a whole host of stories where like plans just went in the garbage
Yeah, let's
because
talk about it
I got
actually.
sick. Yeah,
Like,
like
what does life look like for someone with sickle cell? Like the physical symptoms. What does it look like?
yeah. So I guess like a little bit of a background. Like I was diagnosed with sickle cell when I was 2 years old.
Mm.
And yeah, I lived that out till I was about like 18. And so essentially for me, because I should really preface this and say that sickle cell is a very unique disease for everybody. There are no two sickle cell patients, no two people dealing with sickle cell disease in which their disease looks the same. Like, whilst we might experience certain symptoms all the same, excuse me. Yeah, I wouldn't say that anyone has it similar. So I just want people to know so that like my case may not be similar to what someone with sickle cell listening would
Mm.
have dealt with or like if you have a child who might be growing up with sickle cell like you can't really use it cookie cutter.
Mhm. So with this Foma's experience.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
really is. I just really want to make that clear cuz sickle cell is it's crazy how it manifests in different people. Like
Mhm.
I have a friend who has never had a sickle cell crisis before, like a pain crisis. Yeah, and
Wow.
he's like older than me. Like I always used to be like, how does it feel to be God's favorite?
Yeah,
Because
literally.
like really, you know what I
Wow.
mean? Yeah. So his life looks different. His finances look different
Yeah.
than like mine. So yeah. So for me, I would say like the pain crises, that was a constant for me. When especially when I was living here, I mentioned that because when I moved to Alberta is when I started certain other treatments.
Mm.
And so I would be going to the hospital. Go ahead.
Sorry, before you go on, could you tell us what a pain crisis? Like, I know you
Oh,
said
pain crises. Oh
it's
yeah,
when
sure.
the sickle cell or the red blood cells are
Yeah.
struggling
Go through
to go
like the
through.
veins and arteries. Yeah.
Yeah.
So essentially, thank you for wanting me to clarify. Um, a pain crisis is when, like I said before, the red blood cells sometimes can't really flow properly through the veins. And also because of the mutation of the hemoglobin, they're not able to bind to oxygen well. And when our body is oxygen deprived, that's when things just start to shut down. And that's where the pain comes from. So often when I would do like high exercise and, intensive activities, pain crises loading, loading.
Okay.
Yeah. So essentially what happens is like you might have like literally like clusters of like blood, lack of blood flow causing like these like really bad pain crises. And like honestly, there is like no way to fully describe how it feels when these episodes just like come. Like it's just bad. Like it's so painful. Like some people describe it as like a dull pain. Like it feels like the best way I could maybe describe is like it feels like if someone took like a hammer and like was like banging on your joints with all their power and might, like just and like it's like a pulsing pain, but it also can be like very sharp in nature and it like moves around your whole body. Like
Wow.
my episodes would kind of like just start with like it's like gradual and like it might start in like my joint, like often the pain is usually localized to like your joints. So maybe it would start in like my knee and then like within like 2 hours it has moved from like my knee to my left knee to my right knee to
Oh
my back
wow.
to like my chest. Yeah, and then it'll finally pick a spot and then like stay and like the
How long?
pain
How long are we talking?
like some crises can last for like a week. Like you'll just be in pain, just
Oh,
shout
I
and
didn't
shout
know
and shout.
that.
Yeah, like it's bad.
I heard someone say on a podcast I was listening to that it's like childbirth was less painful for
I
her.
believe that.
Oh my
I believe that because like
gosh.
not having like now living life outside of sickle cell, like that pain, it's actually traumatizing. Like I know that I have like serious trauma. Like there's nothing like it. It's so distinct. Like it almost has like an aura. Like I know I'm about to get sick.
Mm.
It's so intense. Like I look all like, oh, hot girl every day, every day. And then when the pain comes, it's a whole new person. Like
Yeah, I can
I'm
imagine.
like like screaming at the top of my lungs. Like it's bad.
And when that happens, what do you do? Like, is it you have to take a bunch of medication? Is it that you rush to the hospital? Like, what does that look like when you have
So it
crisis?
really depends. I my mom will always let me be really independent. I think that's also where I got that kind of from is she always let me decide what was the plan of action.
Mm.
So usually like first line of defense, I'll usually get like a warm compress, usually like some of these like topical analgesics like rub A535, Voltaren, that kind of stuff, and then like pain medication. But like we be taking hardcore drugs as sickle cell warriors. Like I was like 10 years old, not even, I was like 7 years old when codeine stopped working for me. And then they would move me on to like oral morphine at home because
Wow,
yeah, like taking like Tylenol, Advil, that's the
pointless.
weak stuff.
Yeah.
Like that's for headaches, not for like I could take that, but like it's really like I'm really just wasting my time putting my liver through unnecessary
Yeah.
processing. And so yeah, like I would do that at home. But then like if I can't, so there because like there'd be times where I have crises and I wouldn't go to the hospital, but the pain will intensify to a point where it's like, okay, mom, I'd like to go to the hospital
Mm.
now, and then pack up the bag, and then we go to the hospital. And I usually would be in the hospital for about, thankfully for me, about a week, and the treat.
Thankfully.
Yeah, that's short. That's short.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
so thankfully, like a week is like, yeah, 4 days is was the average I would say.
Mhm.
And I would say the treatments are they put you on like oxygen, like you get an oxygen protocol, then they'll put you on morphine infusion, so just around the clock. Just yeah,
Wow.
around the clock. You can imagine like I'm 10 years old, 7 years old, and
Yeah.
that's what I'm getting. And then like lots of fluids for hydration and stuff like that.
And do the doctors like understand? Like, I've heard that some doctors won't even like they won't believe your pain as a sickle cell warrior,
Yeah.
or especially like in England, for example, where I don't know, they're just not knowledgeable.
Yeah,
Like,
that's those are real life experiences. I thank God that like I so one of the things that my mom did, she was really strategic. We only went to specific hospitals.
mm,
We should try to go to the biggest hospital in the city. Like I remember I used to go to like Brampton Civic, Sick Kids when I was here,
mhm.
and then like I go living in Alberta in Edmonton, go to the University of Alberta Hospital. So those are like the teaching hospitals. They're the most have the most resources, the most knowledge there. So we'd always go to those hospitals, and I didn't have to experience like people not believing me, but like, for example, I remember I have vivid memories being here in the GTA and like be in the hospital. I come there, I'm screaming at the top of my lungs, and like even let's say the pain subsides, my mom is like,
Scream.
yeah, put the show on
keep screaming.
because some people just won't attend to you because it's often like the nurses that just don't know what sickle cell is. They might think I'm narcotic seeking. I'm like, bro, I'm 7 years
It's
old. like, like
yeah.
I'm 7 years old. Like, you know what I mean? So that's real life. It's a lot of like the triage. Like usually when you get emergency doctors know, but I've heard of stories in like places in like rural Alberta where what is sickle cell
Yeah.
disease? And now you have to walk them through your own treatment. Then you tell them, I need a morphine infusion. And they're
They're
like,
like,
get
no.
to pushing. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Even okay, now I'm okay, a lot went through my mind just
It's
now. But
okay.
like first of all, financially, now you have to live in a big city, or it makes more sense to live in a big
Yes.
city, which is more
Absolutely.
expensive, right?
Absolutely.
Because if you want proper treatment, then living in a big city makes more sense than living in a rural place.
Absolutely.
And then also, if you have a crisis at work,
Pack it up. I've had one at school. Oh my God. That was probably one of my most embarrassing days. I remember I was in gym class and like, I think the pain just came and I was like, gotta go, packed up all my stuff. I remember people trying to talk to me. I'm like, bro, I
no,
cannot see y'all right now.
yeah,
And then I'm like running, running, running. I get to the office and that was like the office was kind of like closed. So like I closed the door and like I literally just like start
scream,
screaming. I called my mom and like I was like, I couldn't even get the words out to explain like this is kind of what's happening to me. And so I can imagine that's how it is. Like you don't have the time to explain that. So
mm-mm,
I know a lot of people that they struggle with work
yeah,
because like you got to just leave like and I can imagine maybe it might be easier to just call the ambulance so they can see the kind of the severity of what's going on.
yeah.
I hate to do that, but then there's also ambulance bills for a lot of people. So like
Yeah, another financial.
it's a lot.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Yeah.
So that was a long answer to the question,
Yeah,
but like
sorry.
the no worries. I loved it. So life looks like having crises.
Yeah,
Any
those
other
pain
physical
crises.
symptoms?
The pain crises is the biggest one because like I would have like hospital crises that would like I would crises that would take me to the hospital. I'd probably have like 3 to 5 of those a year. But then I would have ones like at home that I would just try to manage. So I would like just like stay at home all the time.
Mm,
And then like I guess in terms of symptoms, like another one is kind of like chest crises specifically. If you have like chest like pain that stays in your chest, emergency immediately,
mm,
911 immediately because it can really escalate and like you might be having like a heart issue. And so that's like really scary. I've heard especially for some reason this is more localized to the Caribbean. Some people have like leg ulcers
oh wow.
specifically from sickle cell. I'm not too sure why, but like that's a lot of people in the Caribbean deal with that. You can have like necrosis, so essentially like you're having like parts of like your like basically like cells in your body are dying. So
Dying.
like I didn't actually know till like later in life that I actually have like a bit of necrosis in like my spine.
Oh
And
wow.
like when they told me that, I was just thinking, I was like, man, like I've had really bad like crises in my back. Like who knows if
Mm.
like the cells are just packing it up at that time.
Oh
So
yeah.
yeah, so there's like a lot of things that can go wrong. Like you can have eye issues. Like, there's blood everywhere in our bodies. So
Yeah.
what couldn't go wrong?
Oh.
So yeah, that's kind of what it is. And a lot of like your life is devoted to just like your management of your condition, taking your medication, staying hydrated, not pushing yourself too much physically, and going to like appointments.
Mm.
So
So
yeah,
then how does okay, so you pretty much answered this question, but maybe there's stuff I'm missing. So how
sure.
would life look different for sickle cell warriors financially? So what are some things that warriors have to deal with that other people do not have to deal with?
I would definitely say like medication. A lot of people don't like you always you never want to not have your medication.
Yeah.
So I know sometimes we can be like a little bit there are harder financial seasons for people, but like you can't not have medication for yourself or
Mm.
you need to we talked about a little before about like having benefits like for someone who let's say like if you happen to have a child with sickle cell disease or you find that out, quickly get a job with benefits. Like
Yeah.
you need that because I can't imagine like how you would function without like you probably can maybe if you're making a lot
A
of
lot of
money,
money.
especially now there are lots of opportunities to like jobs that don't have benefits like yourself who's self-employed. But still nobody wants to have to pay constantly have to do that. So a job with benefits, then also like having like an employer that is understanding or the
Yeah.
types of work like for example like what's a job that like I don't think you could probably be a police officer. Maybe you could. I don't want to limit anyone, but a high intensity job, a high stress job, a
Yeah.
job where you have to be physically active all the time, that can be really difficult for someone with sickle cell disease. Like you don't think you have limitations with a job that you can
Yeah.
choose. Just because a little too much running and all of a sudden you're feeling pains in your back.
Yeah.
And like I have that's happened to that would happen to me every time I would run. Like every time, like I couldn't run to catch the bus without like I get to the bus and I'm like, oh my gosh, am I gonna have a crisis? And then the
Mhm.
pain would like stop and then I'd like act like a normal person again.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so
I,
that's some things.
yeah. What? So we're talking about your job that you have to pick a specific job that can work. Like, what kind of job do you do? If you don't mind sharing.
So back then, like the thing is,
Oh yeah. Now
when
I guess yeah.
yeah, now it's a little bit different, but I would say like I just my mom was always very much like don't do anything super strenuous.
Mm.
Like so I would work like
Even
in
nursing too much
yeah,
for
like I have a lot of actually. I know a lot of nurses that have sickle cell
okay
disease and they're doing it, but like they know when to you have to know that's
your
another
limitations.
thing about like having sickle cells really just knowing your body, paying attention to your body. Like you have to be super attentive like that whole being one with your body sounds like kind of zen and like weird. No, that's a real thing. Like just really paying attention like okay, I think unfortunately like a lot of nurses like pick up overtime and like sometimes in this economy that's how you're gonna have to meet up with all your expenses, but that lack of rest can throw you into a crisis. Also just kind of like this may sound like like you don't really think of this, but like keeping your house warm all the time. Like we all know, like I think in Edmonton it's like Epcor, that's where we pay energy to.
Mhm.
The bills is high and like I like that whole sleeping in a cold room thing. I don't really
No.
think that's like a lot of people who have sickle cell, you can't do that.
I was actually going to ask you that because if someone's considering, like, you moved from Toronto to Edmonton, which is definitely colder
Yeah.
than here. So how does that like?
um I would say that the thing is I always had to dress warm. But I
Always,
think
yeah,
yeah, like you must dress warm.
mm,
Not just for like regular people dress warm too, right?
yeah,
But like
you
that the
must.
cold like in the winter like it's serious. Like you really do need to keep warm. So when we moved to Edmonton like it wasn't too much of a concern. But like I wasn't like snow pants on as a kid, boots on, hat like
Mm.
bundled up and I think even just like buying a proper winter jacket. There's no fine girl, hot girl, light
It's like you
jacket.
need a proper winter jacket, like a
Yeah. So
warm,
just
warm.
things like that.
Yeah,
There's like. So I would say my family never really considered that, but these are things I know like there are some people whose sickle cell it's very sensitive. Like
yeah,
everything kind of triggers them.
yeah.
And I think that that is something like I used to kind of fear for a lot of Nigerians who had sickle cell disease
Mm.
who coming here like that weather change
Shock to your system.
it's a lot. And so it's like as simple as it sounds, stay warm. Like
Yeah.
really stay warm.
But
Avoid
that's
like
expensive.
swimming.
It's
Yeah, it
expensive to
is.
stay.
Like
My jacket, I wear a fall jacket out
baby
even in
girl,
winter,
no.
but I
No.
could not do that. That's another expense. And
Yeah.
winter jackets are expensive.
They are expensive.
Yeah,
Like that Canada Goose, like
yeah,
it does make a difference.
yeah.
And like those are the type you need that type of warmth.
Like my cousin actually has sickle cell. Her family moved from New York City to Atlanta because like it was just too cold for her, and she's very
Right.
sensitive to. So
Yeah.
imagine family having to uproot their life in order to
Exactly.
move. Yeah, it's
Or even
expensive.
even think about you can't taking the bus. You
Yeah.
cannot in Edmonton. It begins to like minus 40 in the
Oh.
winter. I have been trapped outside in the minus 40 times and like you cannot just be standing out there
Uh-uh.
poorly dressed like you need a car.
Yeah.
Really and truly. The bus is not really a great option for people with sickle cell disease. So there's just a whole like
Yeah.
it's a real life adjustment.
Things we haven't that no like people without chronic illnesses don't even have to consider.
Yeah.
What about therapy or like mental health wise? Is there anything that
Yeah,
yeah.
I think so. I think this is little bit newer. I know they've been really trying to put this into the protocol. And again, like when you have benefits, like even therapy isn't even that cheap when you have benefits. Like at least in my
So
mom's,
expensive.
yeah, and like the coverage that I was under for a while for with my mom, like it's not like you still have to pay for that, but like there are sometimes programs that can kind of help subsidize costs for people with chronic illnesses, but I wish I had gone to therapy sooner. And I'm even actually in the process of looking for like a therapist who deals with someone who has chronic illnesses.
Mm.
It's quite,
That's even another cost you have to consider because
yeah,
extremely specialized medical professionals can be more expensive
exactly.
typically.
And yeah, I've been really like, how am I even going to afford this right now? Because
Yeah.
like that's a very expensive thing. But I know that it's something that I really want. And I think about like, I wish I had done it when I was younger and when like the resources were a little bit, because like in pediatrics, they have lots of available resources that they can kind of give to you sometimes even when you're in hospital. And I never really took those, like sometimes with sickle cell, you just want to get out of the hospital. You don't really want to do too much
Yeah.
in there. And sometimes I wish that I had gone back and like I could have gone back and just taken them because now it's really expensive and not a lot of people can afford therapy. Like
No,
even
it's hella
no,
expensive.
yeah, just
Yeah. I even
regular,
stopped because I
regular.
was like, bruh, like,
Yeah,
this is getting pricey.
it is.
Yeah.
But then I also would say that like again, health is wealth. So you don't
Yeah.
ever want to not have the right coping mechanisms
Yeah.
for a time where like you're so depressed or you're so sick and it's really taking a toll on your mental health. You
Yeah.
can't go to work. Now you're
Yeah.
losing money again.
Yeah.
So
And
yeah.
another financial concern or thing that people with sickle cell have to consider. I was thinking like you said that sometimes you would have a crisis and you just have to cancel everything that was happening. So
Yeah.
like say you had a trip booked and now it's like, well, I
Yeah.
yeah,
Trip book canceled.
lost all
Um
that money.
for real, like even I remember when I was right before my transplant, I was supposed to actually go on a school trip, like my grad trip in high school. I had to pack
Oh.
that up. They were like, no, you can't do that. Real
Mm.
tears that time.
Yeah.
Or like I think a really big one for like the parents. So my mom, and I'm not too sure if I had mentioned this, but my mom's a nurse.
Mhm.
And like back then, like to be a caretaker for someone with sickle cell is extremely demanding.
Yeah.
Her position made things quite easy for us, but not necessarily. She had, like I said, having finding the right employer is really important because she was fortunate that her employer would like she wouldn't have enough like sick time, vacation time to like actually be able to cover all the time she needed off to take care of me. Like
Mhm.
my her manager was so kind that she would like let her like use hours that she didn't even have yet, and then she would just like she would accumulate all of
Yeah.
them as she worked and kind of like
Pay
pay them
back.
back.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or and also like my mom, just so that she wouldn't miss work sometimes, that's why my mom also always worked at the main
Hospital.
hospital, so she picked her job so that
Wow.
yeah, so that for example while she was at work, instead of like eating her break in the break room, she would just come down to the unit I was on and like eat with me and like
Shout out Foma's
yeah, she's really
mom.
like she's a real
Auntie, we're
trooper. She's a
grateful.
real trooper if she's listening. But yeah.
And shout out to
Um
your mom's workplace as
yeah,
well.
for real. She
Yeah.
had a really great manager because the amount of sick time that you need,
Yeah.
it's like yeah, it's most people don't have that. And so
Yeah.
I've heard of stories where people can't keep up with work. Like not all employers are going to do this.
But
They're
not
just
even
going to
just the sickle cell warrior, the
the
parents.
parent, like
Yeah.
it's a huge burden and like a lot of sacrifices need to be made and like it would like imagine if a lot of people are like single parents.
Yeah.
What now?
I
Or
know. Oh my
child
gosh.
care. Thankfully, my parents brought my grandma here to like she lived with us for like 8 years.
Yeah.
So my grandma was always there to take care of them. But like, what if she wasn't?
Yeah.
Then child care, because I have two younger siblings.
What
And
would
at
happen?
that time, I'm the oldest. So at that time, they were quite young. Who was going to take care of them? You know what I mean? So there's just a lot to think about. So
Yeah.
people need to think about this stuff.
And before they have kids, they should be getting tested. But we will talk about
Exactly.
that. We will talk about
Exactly.
that. So, what do the annual costs look like for like drugs and treatment? I know in Canada we have a lot of benefits here, but
hmm
what do you have any insight on that?
So okay, so I can give you kind of like two kind of responses and a little bit of like kind of like a story actually.
Mhm.
So essentially, my mom being a nurse, when we lived here in the GTA, she was working part time, and apparently here, and I went to go do a little bit of research to see like part time nurses and casual staff here do not actually have like benefits,
Mm.
and so my mom was paying for all my medication for almost 10 years. Or I
Oh,
think, yeah, like till I was like 10-ish out of pocket.
wow.
Yeah. And to the point where it became a little bit of a financial burden. And so she went to the doctor and was like, oh, like, do you guys have any financial resources or anything? Because like paying for this medication is like a lot. And the doctor ended up calling the social services on my mom and yeah, like to come take me away. And
Huh?
basically, yeah,
See,
because she asked
backward
about that.
system, very backward
Bro, he
system.
was a black doctor, so
Oh,
that was
even
even
worse.
yeah, that was kind of sad actually. But his understanding was he was concerned that my mom didn't understand the severity of the disease, and that's why she wasn't gonna give me the medication because she couldn't afford it. So they ended up calling social services. They went to my daycare. They
Hmm.
called up my other doctors to see if they were I was following up with appointments. They came to the house to check if my mom was taking care of us. Yeah. And like they ended up having no concerns because my mom's great.
Yeah, and they wonder
But
why
like
people don't ask for help, right? Yeah.
exactly. And so, yeah, like just because she wanted some financial help because it's a lot. Like I wish I asked her like how much if she remembers how much and she was like, "Bro, like we couldn't if we counted the cost, it would have been more burdensome because it's just like you don't have a choice,
Yeah.
right?" And so at that time I tried to look into some other numbers for like America and stuff. I heard that like hospital treatments and like medication, like I'm seeing like $44,000 a month in like America for some of these medications. Like that seems like crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like I've heard like in a lifetime, I read some papers that like people can spend up to $1.7 million on just treatments and medications in one person's lifetime with
Mhm.
sickle cell disease. Thankfully, I live here in Canada, and when we moved to Alberta, like they have really, really great benefits, like even if you're part-time staff. So when we moved here, that was when we really started like not having to pay for like all of my drug
Mm.
costs and stuff like that. And of course, like I said, hospital treatments are free.
Yeah.
So
Because of
yeah,
our universal coverage
healthcare,
here. Okay.
exactly. So
Mm.
yeah, that I don't have I can't really explain exactly how much, but for example, there are things that aren't covered like dressing supplies. So if you have like some people have like one of the treatments is like a red cell exchange. So they'll go and do like a full blood exchange because their blood cells are so like sickled,
Mm.
they would need to get brand new blood cells put in them to kind of keep them healthy for
Oh
a
wow.
period of time. Yeah. So people often have like a port in their chest where they
Mm.
just kind of like hook them up.
I did not
And
know this.
yeah. And so the dressing supplies for that to like take care of that, like, cause it's like basically an open like hole in your chest where some people have like a pick line in their arm to hook them up to like all the like medical equipment.
Mhm.
That's not
Not
covered.
covered.
So we've paid for that kind of stuff before,
Mhm.
um, like just out of pocket. And I can imagine like when I was doing my transplant, the cost like we were paying for like dressings like $200 maybe like a month or something like that.
Wow.
And mine was even a local small thing. It wasn't crazy.
Yeah.
So I can just imagine how burdensome it can be if you don't have medical coverage.
Mhm. And then I also want to ask what your experience has been with medical insurance. Like, for example, if you want to get life insurance
Mhm.
because you have an underlying condition, or I guess now you don't, but like
Yeah.
how
Yeah, okay,
first
so
people,
this has
yeah.
actually been, like, kinda like an issue that I'm still kind of trying to figure out,
Okay.
like, my mom and I are still, like, discussing on how I can actually, like what are the right terms to explain when I go and, like, get
Yeah.
life insurance? 'Cause that's actually something that I don't have, which is crazy,
Mhm.
and if I'm not mistaken, like, my life insurance is going to be expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, like, that is kinda something, and then also, like, people also don't realize, like, some of these benefits run out, like,
Mm.
yeah, some of these benefits run out, and that has been also a challenge. I was on a specific medication that is really expensive, and I think it's called a biologic. It's like some sort of immunosuppressant injection. At a point in time, I was taking that, and that medication, I believe, for, like, a month, I wanna say it's, like, $4,000.
A
Yeah.
month?
Yeah, for, like, 1 month, and that's only, like, 4 injections, like, it's not even nothing crazy like that, and, like, the insurance runs out towards the end of the year, and then
Mm.
they have to, like there are some copay systems and all of these things to help you, but $800 a month is still
No,
expensive.
that's
Like
that's rent.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah.
so insurance be running out, and then they're just like, "Figure it out." So things like that, like
Wow.
yeah, so there's a lot to kinda consider, and that's why one of my biggest takeaways is try and find a job with really good benefits, try to buy into insurance, like, get the when you have a chronic condition, try and get the best
Yeah.
insurance you can. I know it's expensive, but it really does save you in the long
Yeah.
run.
Health is wealth, as you said, right?
Yeah.
Wow. That's I feel like I'm learning a lot. Like, I knew this would be a good episode, but I feel like this would be a great episode, actually.
Great.
And everyone, if you're listening, make sure you like this video on YouTube if you're watching on YouTube and share this on your story. Tag me and Foma. I'll leave Foma's Instagram and tag
Yeah,
Don't Go Broke Trying because we really want to see that you guys are watching this, listening,
absolutely.
and it's going to help a lot of people. So
For
I
sure.
pray that you will all do that. I also want to ask, are there any government benefits aside from like the universal health care that we have? Are there any benefits for people with chronic illnesses that you know of? Sickle
Um,
cell specifically, because I know in the UK they have some great benefits, apparently.
for sickle cell, not really. And like, I think Canada being predominantly like not black,
Yeah.
and there's just not as many black people. I think sickle cell disease is something that really gets swept under the rug. There's often a lot of like resources, aids for people with other chronic conditions. Like for example, cancer is a big one, and that's something I really had to deal with during transplant. Was really realizing like you have sickle cell and not any other disease
Yeah.
that people know of.
Mm.
And so there's not that many like aids. I do know, like, again, the pediatric world is amazing, but once you're out of pediatric, they really tell you figure it out. Like in the pediatric world, there are a lot of support, like organizations that have like work in partnership with the units and the social workers and stuff like that. So they can help kind of cover certain costs,
Mhm.
can sometimes help with like even like if they can't help with like medical bills and or medication, they can give like subsidize, like even help you giving like gas gift cards and stuff like that. That's some of the things that even my
Yeah.
organization like tries to do,
Mhm.
is to kind of provide those, take the burden off of other financial areas.
Yeah.
But for sickle cell, it's like it's not a lot. And that's one of the reasons why I started Not Just You, is because I really wanted to fill that gap where there are lots of organizations for like MS and cancer and diabetes, but like not for sickle cell disease.
Mhm.
So,
And does your organization have any like events that maybe people or any initiatives that people listening can take part
oh yeah,
in?
for sure. So essentially, like right now, one of the big things that we focus on is like just like getting information and resources out there. So like
Mhm.
again, like I'm sure in the show notes somewhere you can like go visit the website and like read through. Like if you have more questions, I think it's really, we really try to like, it's like resource
It's a
dense.
really good website, guys.
Like
And
thanks.
who designed it? It's
I'll connect you
amazing.
with him. He's
Okay.
great.
It's so nice.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so you can always just like donate, and essentially like one of the things that we tried to do, like last summer we were able to go to like different hospitals around Canada and literally just give money to like, hey, this money is specifically for individuals and families dealing with sickle cell disease. This bag with like resources for them, like some just like bits and bobs to kind of help them with
Mhm.
their journey. This is specifically for people with sickle cell, because that wasn't that I never got. I always got something from like the cancer
Cancer.
people, and they're like, "Oh yeah, do you want this?" And it literally says like cancer
Cancer.
on it. Like I don't have cancer. You can imagine as a
Yeah.
little kid, it makes you kind of feel like no one cares specifically about you.
Mm.
So yeah, like really all I can really employ people to do is go donate to Not Just You, and you'll like literally nothing is too small, because like you don't know how far $20 might go, even just to go get the parents a coffee at like the like nearest coffee shop at the hospital. Like those little breaks really blessed my mom
Yeah.
during those times. So yeah, you just don't know what
Yeah.
your money can do. So yeah, if they want to do that, and we're working on a bunch of little programs, just to kind of again celebrate these individuals, because the disease is really stigmatized.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I was actually just thinking about how it not we talked about how it affects your finances and your mom's too, but overall your family's finances. So I just thought of another one.
Yeah.
Going to the hospital, the parking at hospitals is
Crazy.
crazy. So like that's another
Crazy.
financial
Yeah,
burden.
so
Yeah.
again, like God really did that when he
Yeah.
made my mom go into nursing,
Oh,
because
yeah.
so she had like, because we would only go
Staff.
to that hospital, she would have staff parking, but
Okay.
staff parking is not cheap. Cuz a
Oh, they
lot of,
still pay for staff parking?
at least at the hospital that my mom works at, and it's a lot.
Capitalism is a
It's like
big problem.
a lot.
Yeah.
And so my mom be like, we gonna park there. And
Yeah.
so that was kind of how we managed that. But yeah, I know a lot of my mom's like colleagues don't actually have a parking pass. They would just rather take the transit because it's cheaper.
Mm.
So that is a financial, like, whilst we're not paying upfront when we get to the hospital, we are still paying for it. And there were times where like I didn't have the luxury of coming with my mom in her pass. So we're gonna pay for parking at the front of the hospital.
that parking, like I
It's
remember
crazy.
visiting family in the hospital, and I was like, people who are here for months on end, like,
Yeah.
how can anyone afford this?
Yeah,
I think a good thing to do would be like to sponsor a family, like to be able to pay for their parking for a month or
exactly.
something. Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
I think I know at the Alberta Children's Hospital when you're undergoing like treatment where you have to actually live at the hospital, there are a lot of programs to subsidize those costs, but like that's not really always the
yeah.
case. And especially when you're just admitted for a week of parking can be like
It's too
$100.
much. It's too much.
Yeah,
Like, and that's like they have other bills. It's not like this is their only thing. And then say they have to
exactly.
take off work, right, to be there for that week.
Exactly. So now you're down more money.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
mhm.
Um, at the age of 18, you were given the opportunity to undergo reduced intensity bone marrow
Yeah,
transplant. So, what is this? And could you discuss some of the financial implications of this as well? Because I actually
absolutely.
know someone who's going through this right now. She's raising about $100,000 for it.
150,000
150
pounds.
pounds, pounds.
Yeah.
And I was just like, wait, how
Yeah.
can anyone afford this?
Yeah.
So, could you tell
So
us what it is and how your family afforded this?
yeah, like I really thank God. Like this was God ordained how everything kind of worked out. But bone marrow transplant essentially keyword reduced intensity because they've always had a bone marrow transplant. It's actually a popular treatment for cancer, I believe leukemia. And when you kind of reduce the intensity of all the treatments, lower doses, lower amount of radiation and stuff like that, then it really works for sickle cell disease. And essentially, what you do is you would have a donor who is 100% match. Thankfully for myself, my sister was my donor. She was
Oh, wow.
100% match. Yeah, my younger sister. And like that is, again, this was a very, very small chances because I believe like sibling matches it's only like 30% of people have a sibling match. And then the other 70% have to do an unrelated donor match. And then if you're Black, the chances of finding a match is like 1%. So if you're watching this, please join the National Stem Cell Registry because you could really save a life and they give them another shot at life like my sister gave me. So
Mhm.
yeah. So essentially my sister was my donor and they kind of prep her to like be able to donate. And then for myself, you go through chemo, radiation, and then
Oh.
yeah, like kill off all of your bone marrow. Yeah, basically, and reduce your what's the word? You reduce your immune system, and then they harvest the donor's bone marrow and feed that into you, kind of like it's like if you were getting a blood transfusion. That's what it was like. So it sounds super invasive, but it's actually quite simple. And they put it in just like a blood transfusion, and the bone marrow magically knows where to go. And then you're on like this journey to like having your bone marrow, your body accept your bone marrow. And so a whole host of things can kind of go wrong where you can have graft versus host disease where your body can actually reject it.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah. And so, yeah, that's basically how it is. And that is a cure for sickle cell disease because bone marrow, your stem cells, is what produces the blood in you. And so, my bone marrow produces sickled blood cells.
Mm,
And so, my sister, she's trait. So, hers produce the same type of blood that runs in your veins, like
mm.
not like you don't get sick. And so, now the bone marrow that I have from my sister is what's keeping me healthy. So, I don't
Wow.
have sickle cell anymore. I don't deal with that anymore. Yeah, like
Woohoo! So you're sickle
honestly,
cell free at
yeah, I
this
am.
point.
So it's been 6 years actually this past September.
Mhm.
And yeah, like life has been like really, really awesome. But it was quite the journey
Yeah.
to get there. And so this is like it's another reason why I really thank God for living in Canada because medical treatments are free for Canadians.
The
And
whole treatment was free.
the whole treatment was free. And
Wow.
the cost, they told me that it can be like about $250,000 for the like treatment. So like that is just like if you really think about that and like that's
Wow.
just for the treatment.
Yeah.
That's not even talking about how
After.
my mom had to take off work to care for me, how the insurance companies wouldn't like allow her to like get paid while like you pay all into all of these unions and all these benefits and then they're like, "Oh yeah, like no, you can't actually take this time off." That's not to talk about how I actually had to move from cuz I did my treatment in Calgary. That's where they do bone marrow transplants. And so I actually had to my mom and I moved to live in Calgary for about 3 months. And so you can imagine a lot of people will have to pay like their like regular mortgage at home and then like probably rent or hotel or Airbnb or sometimes you can stay in Ronald McDonald, but like that's a great organization. But after a certain age, you can't stay there. You also like, um, because your immune system is so suppressed, you actually can't live with other people. So we think about, you have to basically pay two living costs. You have to think about child care because I have two siblings at home. Like it was a lot. You have to pay for your dressing supplies. Like there's all these things that they don't tell you. It's a huge burden. Like I remember it was really expensive and the treatment was paid for.
Yeah. So imagine if
If it wasn't,
someone lives somewhere where the treatment's not.
yeah,
Like if they live
so
in Nigeria, for example.
exactly, where first you got to come up with the money and then all the other stuff. So like it doesn't stop at that price tag for the actual treatment. So
Wow.
yeah, it's a really big sacrifice. It's a big life event in general.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But I'm glad you were able to get that
Yeah,
surgery
thank
done,
you.
or yeah, transplant done, and now you're sickle cell
Yeah, I'm
free,
living.
living best life.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
really am. Like I always think I never thought that. Like if you had told me like a year before the transplant, maybe even 2 years before the transplant, like I probably would be like, oh yeah, like I have sickle cell for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
So the fact that like I'm really like living a dream and like it really is a second shot at life. Like I didn't know
I
how
love it.
sick I was till I had like I finished the transplant and I'm
Yeah.
like, wow, like
Because that's all you ever knew, right?
exactly.
Yeah. So
So
now it's
yeah.
like, oh, people
This,
live like
yeah, like this how
pain
y'all
free,
living? It's
pain free. You don't have to
nice.
think about like these things.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for
like
real.
life is easier, much
Mhm.
easier. Um, so how is life now versus when you didn't have sickle cell? Like,
Good.
yeah.
Yeah, life is good. I will say sickle cell, there are complications that can arise from like your transplant. So you can still have little health hiccups, like, and these can persist for years after the transplant. Like you have your like 100 days in the actual treatment phase, but the even the year after that, you're still on like a lot of medication,
Mhm.
immunosuppressants. Like it takes a few years for you to kind of like you're a baby. Your immune system is now the immune system of a small child.
Mhm.
So you're at serious risk for a lot of things. So I feel like I had to make a lot of like life adjustments. I would always get sick even still after like high stress situations and stuff, but I'm still grateful because I know the things that I do now, I probably wouldn't have been able to do, like even just going to university. University is so high stress. I
Mhm.
know I wouldn't have
Yeah.
I don't think I would have graduated, and even it took me like I kind of had to slow things down because like I got like shingles from doing organic
Chemistry.
chemistry
Yeah.
because it was so high stress,
Mhm.
and that is a side effect from like when you have chemo. And nobody told me that.
Really?
Yeah. Nobody
Mm.
told me that until I experienced it.
That's even another financial thing that we can consider. Like,
Yeah.
if university is high stress, and maybe like if you had sickle cell still, could cause you to have crises,
And then you're
right?
failing classes that you already paid for. Yeah.
Exactly.
Real
Or
life.
if you can't graduate university, then
And now you can't
job
get it.
prospects.
Yep. Yeah.
There's so much
Yeah, there is so much.
stress.
And I know a lot of people who have really like university, like it's like sickle cell, people who have sickle cell and make it through with their degree, like those are
Like
warriors. Yeah,
literally,
hats
yeah.
off to you because
Mhm.
it's a lot and it takes a lot of perseverance to not be like, man, like I could do something else. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So yeah, like I'm grateful that I didn't have sickle cell when I decided. I don't know who asked me to just jump right into it. Like
Yeah.
I literally finished my transplant and I started university with L on my part. Like it was hard.
I think oftentimes we want to keep up with our friends and stuff
That's what
like
it was.
that.
I felt
Yeah.
like for 100 days I was watching my life through like a glass bubble. Cause
Mm.
like I was so secluded. I only lived with my mom. I wasn't allowed to have like guests or anything. Like it was a lot. And
That's a
so I feel
lot.
like I was so ready to like enter the world, but my
Yeah.
body was like, you better sit
Slow
down.
down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like, they're just small hiccups, but honestly, like if you can get through a sickle cell crisis, you can get through anything.
Anything. That's what we call them, warriors,
For
right?
real.
So everybody, I hope that you learned a lot from this, but clearly we've seen that like sickle cell is not something that you want to willingly give your children, okay?
For real.
So I want to ask you, is there a way that we can prevent sickle cell from being passed down to our children? Because I know it's 100% preventable, right? So
Absolutely.
please teach us, educate us.
Okay. So I really like I'm so passionate about this. I love that Reni is passionate about this
I
too.
am.
So yeah, it being hereditary, meaning that it's like passed down genetically through like family members, it's very, very important that we are like aware of what our genotype is. So in the beginning of the podcast, We talked about like, having sickle cell trait, which is S or AS, and then not having sickle cell trait, which would be your genotype is AA. And it's really important, it's cuffing season, you know what I'm saying? Like it's super important that when you are mingling with someone, you see a potential mate and whatnot. Please try like first go get screened to know what your genotype is because I know a lot of y'all don't know. I'm not judging y'all, but please try and know. Ask your parents. They might even know and might not have just told you. um, and if they haven't, like, and honestly, even if they know, go get screened again because I've heard of scary stories where they thought they were AA and then bam,
Yeah.
they went to go check before they got married or the child came out with sickle cell and it was a mistake. So it's always actually recommended to get like screened twice, by different doctors and whatnot, like in your life, just to be sure. So yeah, find out what your genotype is and then actually like I think it's called like there's a specific word. It's like genetic. It's not genetic selection or something like that, but essentially like I think it's like genetic planning or parent family planning or something like that. So yeah, I might be doing too much, but I personally think that genotypes talking about what if you have trait, if you don't, first date question.
100% agree. Every first date I've been on, the guys are probably like, "Yo, I'm not even trying to marry you
Facts.
yet."
That's what they think, but bro, I'm not trying to marry you either. But
Literally, but like if we ever get to that point, I should know now versus
yeah,
later.
because
Yeah.
you don't ever, I promise y'all, you do not ever want to be in a situation where like the love is sweet, the love is hot, and you have to pack it up because
Yeah.
like or you decide not to and then you have a child with sickle cell because that's gonna bun you more
Yes.
than the heartbreak, I
It
promise.
will.
Like
Respect yourselves,
yeah, for
okay?
real.
No,
Like you've
yeah.
heard all of the financial kind of like burdens, unfortunately, that come with this disease.
Mhm.
You don't want where you now decided, oh, I have AS or I'm AS and you're AS, but we can still make it work.
We
Like,
love each other so
yeah,
much.
like
Love is not enough.
it's not
Baby.
because it gets it gets really hard.
Mhm.
It's hard on families, like it's hard on marriages,
Yeah.
like, and you want to know ahead of time because you don't want to now go into like a blaming fest. Like that's what happened with my parents. Like
Mm.
my mom knew she had trait. My mom actually had a sister who passed away when she was really young from sickle cell disease.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so people die from it. Um yeah, and my dad like he didn't know. And then when they were like your daughter has sickle cell when I was 2 years old, my dad was like, "Nah, like it can't be me." Like he was really on his "nah better blood I get."
Yeah.
Like he really like that was what he was saying.
Mm.
And it took a few doctors to convince him. You don't ever want to be like
What?
that. Because
He was in denial.
yeah, he was in denial.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of people who are in denial. This is a big thing. It's a
Mm.
lifelong commitment. And so the best thing you can do for yourself is ensure you get screened, know what your trait is, and then bring it up as a discussion when you are actually like dating. You don't want to do it right before you get married because you've basically built a life with someone and you have to
Yeah.
tear it down. Now, I can speak towards, let's say you find yourself in the situation. I pray y'all don't. Pray y'all don't. But if you find yourself in the situation where you are both AS and you want to get married and you even want to have children, I would say consider adoption. But adoption is there's a lot of
It-
it's not a simple process
At
either.
all. At all.
Then consider you can do like essentially like genetic like selection with IVF where you basically pick the embryo that doesn't have sickle cell. There are ethical concerns with that for a lot of people and it's expensive. You need bread for that.
You need dough, okay, guys? It's
Yeah,
not.
you
It's
need
not.
you do. And not even just like this is in Canada, you need bread for that.
Yeah, I think they said it's about 20K per cycle, and I think that's US dollars, about 20K,
Mhm.
whatever, and that's per cycle. That's assuming you get pregnant, like on
Yeah,
the
assuming it
first.
works off the jump.
Exactly.
And
So
that's not always the case. So you can choose not to have children, but that's not everyone's story.
mhm.
So you could do all of that, or you could just choose the easier route, which
Yeah,
is just, and like, there's a lot of fish in the sea. Like
yeah,
I know that sometimes it's hard to accept that, but you basically have to pick your hard. Like pick your battle, which one you want to go with. So yeah, sickle cell is preventable, but it takes personal responsibility. And I think that's really important for people
yes,
to know.
and if you are AA or any, actually, you can. I think donating blood is also something that we should suggest to
Yes,
everyone, right? Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, sickle cell disease, one of the main treatments is blood cell or blood transfusions. And funny enough, because sickle cell patients need so much blood, despite having a smaller population in Canada of people who have sickle cell disease, we use up like a crazy amount of the percentage of blood in Canada, like crazy.
Mhm.
So I also implore you, if you would like to help out the sickle cell community in any way, donate blood, especially if you are a person of color, because the blood is like you're more of a match. Like if I get blood from a black person, it's more like genetically compatible with me and I'm less likely to have side effects.
Mhm.
So it's really important that we register for the stem cell registry and also donate blood because you never know whose child you might be saving. I'm sure, who knows, someone listening could have saved my life, like
Yeah.
really and truly.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. So I implore you all to donate blood, to get your genotype tested, and to
Yes.
ask those hard questions on dates. Okay.
Yes. And you can like, be lighthearted with it.
Yeah.
Like it's not like we're not trying to get married, but just bring it up. Like we really need to like destigmatize how
Exactly.
taboo it is because
Yeah.
this is a huge part of your life.
Yeah, for me, honestly, like I've been going on dates,
Sure.
and and I literally on the first date, I'm like, so what's your genotype? Like, I literally bring it up as if it's like nothing.
Yes, I love
I
that.
will say that half the time they don't know,
Yeah.
and if they want to date me again, they actually have to
Oh
get
yeah,
tested
like
before they
when
can go on a
I
second date.
was really, dating when I was on the streets, I
now
don't
she, now
remember.
she locked down.
When I was there, like that was like it was like how I weeded out the unserious guys. Like
yeah,
I'm like, yeah, so I have sickle cell disease. This is what, my genotype is. I need to know yours. And if they didn't know, I'd be like, okay, can you please get screened? And if they didn't, then I knew that you wasn't
peace.
really interested.
Yeah,
And I packed my load and go.
yeah. It's actually a good way to weed guys out.
It
It
is
is.
like if you don't think that this is something serious, then I just personally think we're probably not that compatible.
Yeah.
Like especially like if I explain to you this like why it's important
Severity.
and you don't, sorry, bro.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry. So, do you have any words of encouragement for anyone who is facing a chronic illness? And yeah, any words of encouragement for them?
I would say that something my mom used to always tell me when I would be having a rough time is that 7 years is not forever. And essentially, what that means is like this season is going to pass. And while sickle cell disease, the pain crises were recurrent, just holding on to the fact that I'm going to get through this one. And while there might be another battle uphill for me, like I know that, well, there's going to be a greener side to this. You know what I mean? Like just to like it's something to kind of keep my mind on, a positive thing to like kind of like ruminate on
Mhm.
cuz like it can get really dark and ruminating on the negative things like even during my transplant, the doctors would tell me the people that do well with the treatment are the people who had a positive outlook on life,
Mm.
were really positive throughout the whole journey. Those are the people that they respond well to treatment. So just staying positive, knowing that you're going to get through the season, I would really I would use that to encourage them. And then just also knowing that like you're not limited by your disease. I thank God that I never had like a support system that made me feel super like limited that I couldn't achieve
Mhm.
my dreams, my goals. I think when you have a disease that's so stigmatized, people don't want to talk about it. You feel that, but like you are more than your disease. You can pursue all of your dreams. You can enjoy life to the fullest. You really can. So I'd probably let people know that too.
I love it. And because this is Don't Go Broke Trying, my last question to you is if there's one piece of advice that you give the listeners to ensure they don't go broke trying to live with a chronic illness, what would that piece of advice be?
Okay. The first one is for people who don't have sickle cell disease, get screened for sickle cell trait.
Very true.
Get screened. Like, although that's kind of far off, in the long run, it will save you money. So get screened because you won't have to deal with caring for a child who has sickle cell disease, which is very expensive, a lot of financial sacrifices.
Yeah.
Then the second thing for probably those who have sickle cell disease, I would probably say, or any chronic illness, I would probably say, the first thing is try to find ways to be financially literate because there are a lot of tips and information out there that can actually help you save money, that can actually help you make more money. Listen to all Reni's podcasts and her content. Like, there's a lot of things she can put you on game onto some ways to make money, or to just be smarter with your money. Yeah, try to be financially literate, because at the end of the day, like, once you get into adulthood, you're on your own, and you want to have the financial kind of pillow for the darker days. You know what I mean? So, have that emergency fund. Um, also getting jobs with benefits.
Yeah.
Try your best. I know it's hard. If you can't, get a job with benefits, buy into benefits. It's an investment now, but
It'll pay off.
yeah, it pays off. Like, in the long run, you don't know where you might end up. You don't know what could happen with you and your condition. So I would say get a job with benefits and be financially literate. Those two things. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Well, thank you, Foma, for coming on.
Yes.
Honestly, I think it's one of our best episodes yet. I'm so grateful
Stop.
for you for sharing all this information. Obviously, sickle cell is something that's very close to my heart, and I hope that this will really help a lot of people understand the disease more and also share with others and spread awareness, because we really need to we can stop sickle cell.
For
We can actually
real. We
stop
really
it.
can. We can decrease those
Yeah,
numbers. So
yeah, we really
I
can.
really implore you guys. I hope you enjoyed the episode as well.
Yes.
And thank you so much for having me,
No
Reni.
problem. And would you like to plug yourself? Where can people find
Oh
you?
yeah, for sure. Okay, so you guys I'll plug in Not Just You first. You can find Not Just You on Instagram, on our website, on Instagram, Not Just You _NJY. And then our website is notjustyou.ca. So you can find us on socials and whatnot. And then you can find me personally on Instagram at Foma Just Foma, and on Twitter, pretty much everywhere. I'm Foma Just Foma.
Yes.
So yeah, you can kind of find me there. Yeah, I like food and traveling. So if you're into that content,
Yes. We
yeah,
love her content. I hope that
yeah,
you will all follow her, and I'll make sure to leave all those links in the show notes.
awesome.
And also, if you're listening to this podcast, again, we do have a YouTube version of it. It is a video. It's good to see our faces, beautiful faces. So please make sure you click on that YouTube link, give us a like. And yeah, thank you so much again for being
Thank
here. And I
you.
will see you in the next episode, everyone. In the next episode, I'm also going to be talking to Foma, and we're going to be answering some of the questions that you submitted. We got quite a few questions,
Oh
so I'll
wow.
try to keep the episode a little shorter than this one, but it may be a bit long. I'm sorry to say it. Okay, thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.